What's going on, everyone? So, the Chicago Bulls, per reports, may buy out Lonzo Ball. The Chicago Bulls ended up swapping Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey, and basically just a one-for-one trade, no picks, no nothing. I actually think it was a good trade for both sides. I think this kind of signals to me that Chicago is looking for a rebuild. I think that they're going to rebuild, retool. Again, I could be wrong, but you don't kind of make that move unless you're planning on kind of getting younger, hitting the reset button a little bit. I will see what they do with guys like DeMar DeRozan. They're shopping Zach LaVine, trying to unload him. So do think Chicago is going to do a little bit of a shakeup. Also, considering all of the different trades that they had turned down along the way, especially last season, to then turn around and trade for Josh Giddey, doesn't really add up unless they decide to, hey, let's hit the reset button. Let's build around Kobe White. Let's build around Josh Giddey. Kind of, put the pieces and young talent to kind of be competitive. And in all honesty, in the East, they might not be much worse than they were these last few years. It's not like they've been this like perennial playoff, perennial just quality team. They've kind of been, towards the bottom of the barrel. But if Lonzo Ball does get bought out, which makes a lot of sense for Chicago, because again, they got so many pieces that you don't really have the need for Lonzo Ball. What are you going to do? You're going to bring him off the bench? Him and Josh Giddey don't really make sense side by side. So I do fully expect to see Lonzo Ball ending up getting bought out. That's where the Lakers come in. Now, I personally wouldn't mind seeing Lonzo Ball returning to the Lakers under certain conditions, right? Now, before you jump in, I'm sure some of you are going to be like, yeah, bring Lonzo Ball, bring him back to LA, let's make it happen. Sure, some of you are probably like, no way, the injuries, all of that stuff. But hear me out for a moment, okay? Because look, pre-injury, before Lonzo Ball got into these injuries, the dude was absolute money. He changed his shot and was shooting like 44% or something like that from three-point range. He's a guy that, one of the better playmakers in the league, an excellent defensive guard. Now, obviously, we'll have to see if there are any kind of like setbacks and kind of implications to his defense and stuff. But still, right, if he can kind of be anywhere close to the form that he was in Chicago right before the injuries, or even like with the Pelicans before the Chicago tenure, right? Like, sign me up for that. Lonzo was looking very good and was looking like the promising prospect that he should have been. But he's a big risk, right? There's going to be a lot of questions with Lonzo Ball because he hasn't played in like 2.5 years. So to me, the stipulations I would put on it is, one, you're not guaranteed to start. You're probably more likely than not coming off the bench as like the first backup point guard, which I don't mind. Again, I'm okay with that. Two, you're not getting more than a vet minimum because it is a big risk, right? But at a vet minimum deal, like, who are you going to get at the backup point guard position that has the potential to be better than Lonzo Ball for the vet minimum? Nobody, right? Like, you're getting Chris Paul. Like, yeah, I like Chris Paul. I'm not against signing Chris Paul, right? If you get Chris Paul for the vet minimum and let's say Lonzo goes and gets some more money elsewhere, which could happen. A team could take a flyer on him, maybe give like a taxpayer mid-level, something like that, right? Lonzo, the upside for Lonzo is incredible, especially at that price. But to me, right, if you can kind of convince Lonzo like, hey, you're from LA, you wanted to be in LA, you get to be back in LA, you get to sign with us on a prove-it deal. Look at Malik Monk, for example, right? Malik Monk just signed, a 4-year, $78 million deal? Like, that could be, you could get back to being that 20, 25 million a year guy. Maybe even if you're not that, at least maybe you get the 15 or 18 million a year and really get a real contract. But come to us, right? Maybe the Lakers even give him a new deal later on going forward, right? Especially if you want to stay in LA. But momentarily, the way I would look at it is you bring him in on a prove-it deal. You tell him like, hey, you can use the Laker brand, right, to kind of build and raise your stock value to where then you can maybe go somewhere else. Or if it works out here, maybe we can work something out to re-sign you and keep you long term. I don't hate the idea of Lonzo Ball. Now, again, it depends on what kind of shakeups the Lakers do, right? So like, if the Lakers do trade for Trey, at that point, like, yes, I still would bring in Lonzo, but how much is he going to play at that point, right? Where if they were to go and maybe go the depth route, right? And let's say that they trade D'Angelo Russell for, I don't know, Dorian Finney-Smith, just throwing a name out there, right? Let's say they kind of just upgrade in some like rotation pieces. Well, then at that point, Lonzo makes a ton of sense. Or even if they got like a DeJounte Murray, right? I don't hate the idea of bringing in Alonzo, right? Because you still need a backup guard, right? You still need a backup point guard. Even if you get Trey, still need a backup point guard. But Trey is just so ball dominant. Now, obviously, that could change playing alongside LeBron, playing alongside Anthony Davis. Again, we'll see what happens with Trae Young. I'm just kind of using him as an example. But to me, I'm not saying you don't get him regardless. I think if you can get him for a vet minimum and he's willing to kind of accept that role off the bench for a year, right, then I think that you do that. Now, he may end up going and looking for a job where even if he does only get a vet minimum, might go looking for a job to where he has to, or he gets to be a starter. That is definitely something. But again, even if you're like, let's say you're a starter on, Washington or something like that, the likelihood of you really kind of skyrocketing your stock is still probably less likely than if you were in a backup role again and for the Lakers and actually being a real quality contributor, because people would still look at you as that starting point guard, and most organizations, most teams are going to look and go, oh, he's doing that for this reason, right? He's not doing it just to be a backup. And depending on how things shake up with his career, and if he can't stay healthy, then he might not be anything more ever than a backup. And he shows that, like, hey, at least I'm willing to accept that role if that was the case, so I can stay in the league. So I think it would be a win-win for Lonzo either way. Again, that doesn't mean that another team might not come in. I'm not saying it's a lock to happen, but it does make a lot of sense. Like, Lonzo always wanted to be in LA. His family's still in LA, right? Like, I think he is just such a low risk, high reward type move. Again, you're not talking about $10 million. You're talking about a vet minimum deal on a prove it deal. He's still going to get a bag from Chicago for being bought out, right? I do think Chicago will try to look to trade him first and maybe use his salary for some team. But ultimately, I think he'll probably get bought out. And to me, again, it's like, who are you going to get that's better? Right? And if the Lakers end up kind of standing pat, then I don't think he makes sense, right? If you, like, let's say the Lakers essentially just run it back, right? Maybe just draft somebody at 17 or something like that, which is always a possibility. I hope that's not the case, because I don't think the roster running it back player for player, front to back, I don't think is necessarily good enough to actually win a championship. I think that they have a shot, but I don't think that it's like, oh, they're a top 5 roster in the league. But again, if the Lakers do end up trading, say, Gabe Vincent and D'Angelo Russell, or say D'Lo ends up walking, right? You flip Gabe Vincent into something, and now it's like, okay, well, we have a need for a backup point guard or a starting level point guard or whatever. I don't hate the idea of taking the flyer on Lonzo, right? I think he's a guy that can come in, be a quality contributor. If he can still kind of maintain, 80% of what he was. Talk about one of the best defensive guards in the league. You're talking about a guy that was shooting excellent from three-point range, was playing excellent on-ball, off-ball. We know he can pass, right? We know he can get to the rim, right? What does his athleticism and explosiveness look like? I mean, he's had some, tape and stuff and kind of trying to show, like, hey, I still have some of this in the tank. So, again, it's always a possibility. But ultimately, like, to me, it's more so of just finding, Lakers need to find that value. Lakers need to find that piece or two or several, right? Like I've talked about Kevin Porter Jr., for example, right? Kevin Porter Jr., to me, again, is another guy that really needs to raise his stock again. And so to me, it's kind of like, okay, well, if you could take a flyer on a guy like a Kevin Porter Jr., take a flyer on a guy like Lonzo Ball, if they pay off, you're golden, right? If Lonzo can get back to being that Chicago Bulls Lonzo Ball, I mean, you're talking about a guy that probably give you 15, 8, and 8 off the bench, plus defend the best guard on the other team. And then you're talking about a guy in, like, say, a Kevin Porter Jr., if you can get him, talk about a guy that go give you 20 on any given night or on a regular basis. I mean, the guy averaged, 19 or something like 19 and some change, right? So, again, it's like, if you can find those kind of diamonds in the rough and find those little gems that are still young enough to have the potential, because it's not like Lonzo's 30, right? So he's still young enough to be a piece now and maybe the future. But also just kind of gives you a guy, at least momentarily, whether you do get a Trey or you do get a DeJounte or whatever, right? You get a Donovan Mitchell. Even if you get a Donovan Mitchell, I still think, because Donovan Mitchell being able to kind of be the two guard at times too, I do think you can do a little work. And Lonzo was able to show his ability to play off ball with Chicago, playing alongside LaVine and DeMar, right? He kind of would be the initiator, then kind of move off ball. If he can continue to do that and continue to develop that, I think he could play well with LeBron. Also, him and LeBron were so fun to watch, right? They really were. Like, I was totally on board trading Lonzo to go get Anthony Davis, and it was a wise choice because the Lakers won a championship. But I actually enjoyed that duo, that pairing. I mean, they had some like real highlight moments, highlight plays, that just like look ahead pass that Lonzo's really good at. I think he would give you a different look, right? Whether you got a Trey or you got somebody, like one of the big problems the Lakers have had is like when LeBron and, you know, even D'Lo and stuff like that go to the bench, our offense just gets stagnant. We don't have anybody that can make the plays and kind of keep the offense functional, right? I think Lonzo is a guy that could do that. So I'm all for it. Again, if he's willing to kind of accept whatever role is given to him, right? I wouldn't even be against starting him depending on the rest of the roster, right? Depending on what happens. Like I said, if like, say D'Lo walks and, you know, you say you upgrade some of the rotation pieces or whatever, I wouldn't mind Lonzo, but more likely than not, he's probably coming off the bench. And to me, it's like, okay, if you accept the bench role, if you're willing to kind of come in, play for a vet minimum deal, let's make it happen, right? I don't hate that idea. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you like the idea of Lonzo? Do you not? Do you think, like, no, stay away from him? He's not the guy, right? I just look at it as just, again, low risk, high reward, and that's the type of things that the Lakers need, right? Lonzo, if it doesn't work out, you just let him go. It's not a big deal, right? You're not really losing anything. But if it works out, you know, could be in good shape. But again, however you feel, let me know down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.